First puzzle. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are: rook takes rook, check. Queen takes pawn. Queen takes rook. Checks in this position are: rook takes rook, check. Queen to d5, check. The best move in puzzle position is: queen takes rook. Rook takes rook. Rook to d8, check. Rook takes rook. Queen takes queen. Another puzzle. Threats in this position are: knight takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. The best move in puzzle position is: d4. Bishop to b6. d5. Queen to f6. Pawn takes knight. Let's see the next puzzle. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are: bishop takes knight. Queen takes pawn. Here are checks in puzzle position. Knight to c7, check. Knight to d6, check. Solution to the puzzle is: knight to c7, check. King to f8. Queen takes queen. Next, let us look at threats in puzzle position. There are no threats in this position. Here are checks in puzzle position. Rook to e4, check. Rook to d4, check. Rook to c1, check. The answer is: rook to c1, check. King to d5. Rook takes rook. Next puzzle. Puzzle position vulnerabilities are: knight takes pawn. Checks in puzzle position are: queen to b4, check. Queen to e7, check. Queen to e8, check. The puzzle is solved using: queen to b4, check. King to g8. Knight to e7, check. King to h8. Knight takes queen. Next puzzle. Threats in puzzle position are: there are no threats in this position. There are no checks in this position. Here is the solution to the puzzle. King to d6. Queen to f6. Rook takes bishop. Queen to d8, check. King to c6. d5, check. Queen takes pawn. Next, puzzle position vulnerabilities are: queen takes pawn, check. Bishop takes pawn. Checks in puzzle position are: queen takes pawn, check. Knight to f3, check. Answer to this puzzle is: queen to g6. g3. Knight to f3, check. King to h1. Bishop takes rook. Let us go to the next puzzle. Threats in this position are: queen takes rook. Queen takes pawn, check. Rook takes pawn. Checks in puzzle position are: queen takes pawn, check. Queen to d5, check. Solution to the puzzle is: rook takes pawn. Next, here are the threats. Queen takes rook, check. Rook takes rook, check. Knight takes bishop. Here are checks in puzzle position. Queen takes rook, check. Queen to g4, check. Queen to h3, check. Rook to h2, check. Rook takes rook, check. The best move in puzzle position is: queen to h3, check. King to g1. Queen to h1, checkmate. Next, puzzle position vulnerabilities are: queen takes bishop. Queen takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn, check. Pawn takes pawn, check. Here are checks in puzzle position. Pawn takes pawn, check. Pawn takes pawn, check. The best move in puzzle position is: pawn takes pawn, check. King takes pawn. Bishop to h4, check. Let's see the next puzzle. The threats are: bishop takes pawn. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes bishop. Knight takes pawn. Knight takes queen. Checks in this position are: bishop to h2, check. The best move in puzzle position is: knight takes queen. Knight takes queen. Knight takes knight, check. Bishop takes knight. Bishop takes knight. One more. Threats in this position are: pawn takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn, check. Bishop takes pawn. The checks are: bishop takes pawn, check. The puzzle is solved using: bishop takes pawn, check. Knight takes bishop. Queen takes queen. Let us go to the next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. Rook takes knight, check. Rook takes pawn. Rook takes pawn. Knight takes knight. Checks in puzzle position are: rook takes knight, check. Knight to d6, check. Knight to g5, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Knight to g5, check. King to g6. Knight takes rook. King takes rook. Knight takes rook. Let's continue. Threats in puzzle position are: rook takes bishop. The checks are: knight to f3, check. Knight to c4, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. Knight to c4, check. King to d3. Rook takes bishop. Another one. The threats are: rook takes knight. There are no checks in this position. Solution to the puzzle is: king to f5. King to h5. Rook takes knight. Let us go to the next puzzle. Here are threats in puzzle position. There are no threats in this position. Checks in puzzle position are: rook to b7, check. Rook to f6, check. g6, check. The best move in puzzle position is g6, check. King to g7. Pawn takes rook. Next puzzle, let us look at threats in puzzle position. There are no threats in this position. Here are checks in puzzle position. Knight to e7, check. Knight to f6, check. The best move in puzzle position is knight to e7, check. King to f7. Knight takes rook. Next, let us look at threats in puzzle position. Bishop takes pawn. Bishop takes knight, check. Knight takes pawn. Checks in this position are: bishop takes knight, check. The best move in puzzle position is bishop takes knight, check. Queen takes bishop. Knight to e5. Queen to d8. Queen to a4, check. b5. Queen takes bishop. Let's continue. The threats are: king takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. Answer to this puzzle is: king takes pawn. Bishop to c2. King takes pawn. Another puzzle. Threats in this position are: rook takes pawn. Bishop takes pawn. King takes knight. Here are checks in puzzle position. Rook to g8, check. Here is the solution to the puzzle. King takes knight. c7. Bishop to f7. Another puzzle. Here are the threats. Queen takes pawn, check. Queen takes pawn. The checks are: queen takes pawn, check. The answer is knight to f4. Rook to d2. Rook takes rook. Let's continue. Threats in this position are: pawn takes pawn. Rook takes knight. Rook takes pawn. Rook takes bishop. Rook takes pawn. Here are checks in puzzle position. Bishop to c5, check. The answer is bishop to c5, check. King to f1. Bishop takes rook. Next puzzle. The threats are: queen takes pawn. Queen takes knight. Queen takes bishop. Queen takes pawn, check. Let us look at checks in puzzle position. Queen to e3, check. Queen to f4, check. Queen to d2, check. Queen to c2, check. Queen takes pawn, check. Solution to the puzzle is: queen to f4, check. King to b1. Bishop to f5, check. Queen takes bishop. Queen takes queen, check. Let's see the next puzzle. Here are the threats. Bishop takes knight. Knight takes pawn. Queen takes pawn. There are no checks in this position. Solution to the puzzle is knight to h3. Another one. Threats in this position are: there are no threats in this position. There are no checks in this position. The best move in puzzle position is d4. King to c4. King to e4. a5. Pawn takes pawn. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.